I wonder how long will Putin hold, because he's doing nothing for his country. For how long will the Russian elite tolerate this? The Russian people, unfortunately, I don't think can do anything. The Russian situation, economic situation, is not good. So Russia has had 2 good years in terms of GDP growth, of 4% growth in 2023 and in 2024. But this year, the growth will be barely 1%, probably 2% in Ukraine. And inflation is a dubious issue. Officially, it's now 7%. But when you look up on opinion polls that the central bank publishes, it's 14%. When you look up on inflationary expectations that the central bank publishes, it's 13%. And the official interest rate is 15.5%. So something is not right there. I think that the official inflation rate is wrong in Russia, and that would suggest also that the growth rate is no growth at all, but a certain decline. I dare not say how much it would be. So the Russian economy looks completely stagnant, and this is stagflation, double-digit inflation, and no growth. And this is not the situation you want to be in. And very importantly, for next year, Russia has not officially increased its arms expenditure. That is in the official budget, but kept it at the same level. So Russia now seems to say, sorry, we can't spend more on our military. We are not going for victory. We are going for a long war of attrition. And that is not the situation you want to be in. So I saw one article the other day saying that Putin's only hoped, the worst thing that could happen to Putin is that Trump dies, because Trump is Putin's last hope. Putin hopes that Trump will force Ukraine to give up territory in the Donetsk region that the Russian troops have failed to conquer for the last 11 years. I mean, it's really a pathetic view of the US today. Yeah, and what is the big difference between Russia and Ukraine is that Ukraine has access to international financing. $100 billion a year, Russia has no access to international financing. The Chinese, not even the Chinese provides the Russians with international financing. They do sell technology to the Russians, military technology, or what they call dual technology. And that is very important. So the Western technology sanctions don't function very well, but the financial sanctions function very well. So what is happening as we speak, it is that Russia is running out of a liquid part of its natural reserves. And then Russia is in a pretty tough place. So something that I found quite remarkable is that Russia for the last 3 years has had a budget deficit of about 2% of GDP, which, by Western standard is nothing. The US and France have 6-7% of GDP in budget deficit for no good reason, while Russia, that has a reason, can't do more than 2% of GDP in a budget deficit because they can't finance it. They don't have any access to international financing, and they can't raise much money at home either. So the Western sanctions function. They don't break Russia, but they keep Russia at a low level. So in short, Russia is in no growth, stagnation, stagflation, and it cannot finance any military offensive.
So what are the indicators that we would need to look out for a Russian financial collapse through 2026? And do you think it's likely?
I wouldn't say financial collapse. I would say hardship and not collapse. And generally, economies rarely collapse. If you don't have really madmen in charge of economy, and the Russian economic politicians or technocrats are very skillful. So this is why they have managed to keep it going, and Putin allows them to manage affairs. So he has not tried to cut interest rates as the madman who is president in this country, that is the United States, is doing. Putin would not try to interfere in that fashion. He's far too professional and sensible to do such a thing. So he simply sees the amount of money is available. And my favorite numbers here is Ukraine is spending 50% of GDP on its military. Russia is spending 8% of GDP on the military. Because for Ukraine, this is an existential war, and the people understands it very well. For Russia, it's not existential. It's existential only for one person, Putin. So the problem, to my mind, is very much Putin. No Putin, no war.
Do you think Putin has got himself in a position where he can't afford not to be at war because he's got his economy and his work base all focused on everything to do with the war? And if all of a sudden there is no war, then the financial model will start to collapse around him, and he will become even more vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that Putin needs war for many reasons. The first reason is political. The war allows him to repress the population far more than he would be able to do easily otherwise. And it gives him, so to say, a reason for being. That he is gathering old Russian lands as he sees it. And the other reason is, as what you suggested, how did this growth rate of 4% in the last 2 years occur? Because old Soviet arms producing companies beyond the Urals were revived. I mean, this is not what you want to do. These companies should die because they're obsolete. But now they were pumped up again in order to produce old style 60s and 70s arms. Who wants that? Putin does. And he's wasted, what the Ukrainians say, 1.2 million Russian men on the front. At least 200,000 Russian soldiers have died, and hundreds of thousands more or less seriously injured. And this is also a reason Putin can't allow the war to stop. If he does, what would happen? He would have more, probably 2 million men with PTSD coming home and killing wives and neighbors and whatnot, what we saw from a much smaller war in Afghanistan in the 1980s, where the Afghan veterans became a feared group of organized criminals. Now it will be far worse, so it would be really dangerous. And people will ask Putin, sorry, what did you do? What did you do with our 1 million men in Ukraine? Did you just waste them for your pleasure? And all the money you wasted there? And it's very striking that Putin, with so little political, so few political constraints, cannot increase military expenditure.
Mm-hmm. So finally, Anders, what are your predictions for 2026? How do you see things developing?
First, I think that these current bizarre so-called peace talks with the US will fail. And I think that this will be a well-deserved black mark on Trump. And secondly, I think that Europe finally will stand up. And I very much appreciate that we are now talking about Europe and not the European Union, including both the United Kingdom and Norway, which are both very important in support of Ukraine. And Ukraine will hold firm. And what we're seeing now is that it's much more a war on Russian oil. And the Russians' strong attack now is on Ukrainian electricity. So the natural thing, if anything would come to ceasefire, it's an energy ceasefire, that Ukraine stops bombing certain oil assets and Russia stops bombing electricity assets in Ukraine. This is what would be possible, where both sides have an interest in reducing the warfare. Otherwise, I see the war continuing. Nothing can happen inside Ukraine in this regard. The Ukrainians know that this is an existential war. There could be elections, but I think that is sort of maturing. And if there are elections, it's likely that former commander-in-chief Vitaly Zaluzhny would win the elections. And my suspicion is that President Zelensky will realize that and withdraw himself. There are no other credible politicians than these two men in Ukraine. And in Russia, I wonder how long will Putin hold, because he's doing nothing for his country. For how long will the Russian elite tolerate this? The Russian people, unfortunately, I don't think can do anything.
You've been watching Times Radio Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. Now, if you want more on the war in Ukraine, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for membership to get you exclusive content and allow you to ask questions back to me. And remember, Frontline is also available in podcast form. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Times Radio Frontline.